Welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, the one thing that we really focus on here at Bulletproof Selling, the one thing we work into every show, into every talk that I give, into all the work that I get to do with companies is removing hope as a sales strategy. Now, you may not think that you are relying on hope too much. You may be having the best year of your entire career and you just happen to stumble across this podcast. You heard about this guy, Sean, maybe somebody that you know saw me speak somewhere. Well, believe it or not, if you're in sales, you're on a battlefield. And on this battlefield, we're dealing with threats. We're dealing with objections. We're dealing with problems. We're dealing with the deals that we don't win. And if we hope that we're going to remember to do something differently next time, if we hope that the economy is going to change or that our prospects are just going to get easier to deal with or they're going to magically become more responsive, then we're not going to get the results that we're after. We're not going to be able to sell, but more importantly, we're not going to be able to serve. So over the course of the last few years here at Bulletproof Selling, we have been on a mission to help salespeople remove hope from every aspect of how they sell. And in the course of that, every single show, we've been able to have on a guest. We find Hall of Fame speakers. We find best-selling authors. We find people that are out there in the world of sales, managing teams, building them from scratch, making sure that their people are operating from great systems and processes so that when they're out there serving, when they're out there selling, they don't have to hope for success. They know that that day, whether a sale was made or not, they have been able to serve someone in their industry, in their customer base, in their pipeline. And therefore, they're going to be more likely to get that sale in the future. But of course, if we show up as partners with our prospects and with our customers, we're so much more likely to land that deal. Now, of all the guests that we've gotten to have here, some of the ones that I feel a kinship with more closely than others are the veterans that we get to have on. And we've been able to have on people from just about every branch of the armed services here in the United States, veterans from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, even the Coast Guard, and of course, people from international. We've been able to have on some great veterans of the IDF and people that have served in other branches as well, British Royal Marines, British pilots. It's been very, very cool getting to connect the military background that I have with the systems that kept us alive on the battlefield and helping them come into the battlefield of business. So today's guest, no different, Navy veteran. And where this gentleman and I really connected strongly was this idea that hope does factor into sales, but it doesn't just factor in at the tactical level. Not just on the front lines, it actually factors in to how we develop and build our team. So this is going to be a great conversation, one that we haven't gotten to have on Bulletproof Selling before. I want to welcome to the show, without any further ado, Mr. George Fisher, Vice President of Sales with Sekion. George, welcome to Bulletproof Selling, sir.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So, Marine Corps veteran myself, you are in actually our parent branch, or you were, Navy veteran. So tell us a little bit about your time in service, what you got to do, all the cool stuff you did for the Navy, and then how you ended up in sales, because so many people tell me that, Sean, the military didn't prepare me for anything in the civilian world, let alone a career in sales. I know you and I disagree with that. So love to hear about your background, man. How'd you end up where you are?
Sean, it's funny. I thought the same thing. I went in the Navy as an electronic warfare technician. I was EW. And, my plan was to be a technician and spent 6 active years, 2 years inactive. Desert Shield, Desert Storm was on carriers. I still think the EW rate is one of the best communities that I've ever been involved with. Still talk to these guys 30 some years later. But, when you think about the sales side, it's really about taking in information. This is what we did in the military in electronic warfare, right? Looking at a situation, developing a plan, acting on the plan, and following through and closing. And then, sales was put into our DNA in boot camp, right? Selling to our team, selling confidence, selling everything that we were doing. So when I got out of the military, I, of course, went to a technical path because that's what I thought I had to do. But then I started looking around and said, holy cow, wait a minute. I think I could do the sales thing. So that's when I jumped over to a sales, role and found out that, all you got to do is be honest with people, tell people what they need. And if you can solve a problem, you can be successful.
And that's really the path that I think anybody follows if they're going to be successful. Make a plan, execute the plan, assess it along the way. The military does a great job of teaching us how to do that. So thanks for doing that for us. You're the generation just prior to mine. So thanks for keeping the ships running. So I was able to float on them as well. And then now I want to talk a little bit about the career field you're in now, because information security, it's going to be a massive, it is a massively exploding industry right now, of course, because the more that we're in the tech space, the more that information needs to be protected and secured. But talk to me a little bit as well about how sales might be a little different in this space than in some others.
This Sean, I spent over 20 years in the office technology, copiers, printers, and when I saw cybersecurity, it did bring me back to the military, right? Because it is the one side of tech that is growing. The bad actors out there are getting better and better and better. And we have to get better on our side as well. So, it was a natural fit for me to move over to in the military. You intercept a threat, you identify, you decide what you're going to do, you put the plan in action, and if it's the right plan, everything works out perfect. It's the same in sales, it's the same in cyber, right? The bad actors are out there identifying what we do, and then initiating a countermeasure. And I happen to think the company I'm with does it very, very well with AI, an XDR platform. So it's in the military. I sat in something called a CIC, right? Combat Information Center, which was a hub of information coming in to put together data to develop a plan. Here, instead of CIC, we have what's called a SOC, right? A Security Operations Center, where it's the same stuff coming in. Threats are coming in. We identify about 1.5 billion indicators a day. We look at them, pare those down about 1.5 million, get them down to about 7 or 8 real life. Hey, these are bad threats. So, but I do want to bring up something too in sales. You brought up hope earlier, Sean, and I want to say that too, because I know that's one of the things that we were going to talk about. And it's funny you brought that up, because I always talked about the reps or managers or anybody smoking hopium, right? You're hoping.
Yeah, we heard that before. Yeah,
and I didn't make that up, but man, it really resonated. Yeah. Me, right? Where you have that. But what I found out is that it's not so much the reps don't hope. The reps have all the confidence in the world in their own abilities. It's the managers, it's the leaders, it's RevOps, it's everybody else that's hoping sales can deliver. Sales has the confidence to do it. It's just they need to stop hoping. They can't hope, right? So that's why we have to really convince the leaders and the people above that hope isn't a strategy. And again, that's stealing from somebody else, but hope is not a strategy.
This is something that we saw a lot in the military. Obviously, it's lead by example. The best leaders that we had were the ones we were willing to follow into certain death because we saw them living the message that they were telling us to live. It wasn't like, do what I say, not what I do. Leaders like that never lasted too long. And so if we don't want our salespeople on the front line to have hope, then it means as leaders, we need to start that. We need to remove hope from every aspect of what it is that we do, how we manage, how we recruit, how we incentivize, how we reward. Hope can't play into it. We need to have those things in place that we know, just like in the military, if I have to step out because of a family issue, because I'm out of action, the people right under me can just step right into my processes and systems so the mission can continue. So we've asked every guest here on the show, George, where they see salespeople relying on hope more than they should. I think you helped tee this up really great because you said it's not really the salespeople that we need to start with, it's the leadership. But where do you see the leaders, George, hoping more than they should in how they stand up, manage, or incentivize their teams?
Well, I always find sales is one of the spots that we need, companies feel that they need, yet it's one of the first places that they look for cuts when we start to struggle, correct? And so, and what we really have to look at is so that when we build the team up is really where we should start this, Sean, if you look, and so I know you and I talked about, I drew a triangle. And because the beauty of a triangle, and I stole this from somebody else, right, is you need 3 equal sides because you're always going to break on your weakest side of a triangle. So when I'm building out my team, depending on if they're brand new people right out of college, or these seasoned vets that are coming in, I look at these guys and I look at 3 sides. And the first side I look at is will do. Will you do the job I need you to do, right? And If I'm opening up a BDR, a net new business development spot, I need somebody to make calls. I need somebody to
Mhm.
send emails. I need somebody to ramp up activity, right? So will you do that? I will tell you, I get a lot of veteran people. We're again in the tech side, in sales, we're seeing a lot of layoffs, right? A lot of downsizing happening. And I get a lot of people say, I absolutely will do that. And that's where we got to dig in, right? Will you actually do it? But not only will you do it, can you do it? Do you
Mm.
possess the skills? I have a ton of people that say, I'll come in and run through a wall for you. Unfortunately, they can't, right? And
Yeah.
it's not nothing wrong with them. It's just behaviorally, their skill sets don't match up what we're looking for. So we have the will do and the can do. And then on the third one is the team fit. And I think that is where leadership misses quite a bit. Sometimes they see a guy because they say, hey, that guy or girl, they are awesome. I've seen that person. I've known them for all my life. They're the life of the party. They're going to be perfect. And then you bring them in and it destroys the team. So you can actually
Mm.
bring in somebody really good and destroy the team, right? Or bring the team down, or vice versa. Sometimes you bring somebody in that can actually elevate the team. So it's just as important to look at the team piece, the will you do the job? Can do you possess the skills? And then that team fit, how do you look? If I can hit 7, 8, 9 out of 10 on all three of those things, I have a good fit. And then what that allows me to do is bring people in and then not worry about turnover and retention. Because again, if I put people that look the same, feel the same, want to succeed the same together, and they enjoy each other's company, man, we're gonna be around for a while.
Well, that's a team that anybody wants to be a part of. So I'm curious then, before we dive into how to recruit in a systemized way, where we're not hoping that we get the right people, that because somebody's really great at a cocktail party, they're going to be really great on a sales team. If I'm a leader and I'm hearing this, how do I know that I may not have the best fit in either three of those areas? Obviously, I'm listening to a sales podcast because I know I can do better in sales or my team can do better. But what are the indicators that you've noticed across your sales career that one of those three items might be off, that one side of my triangle might be a little too weak to maintain the structure?
I think as sales leaders, we get enthralled and we want to fill spots, right? I think it's about asking the hard question and digging in. And I tell everybody that, this is a relationship that hopefully, well, here I just use the word hope, right? That we is going to last forever, right? This is a marriage that's going to last forever. Now, realistically, it might not, but because of that, because we're going to spend a lot of time together, and my livelihood and my family's livelihood and your family's livelihood is dependent upon each other, we really got to spend some time and make sure this is a good fit. And so you have to ask good questions, right? You have to dig in. And sometimes it's just not a fit. It's not that they're the wrong person. We just don't have the right position. And I think that's a big key too. I think we've become such a nice in society, right? That you'd be a great fit when we know that maybe they won't be, right? But sometimes you just got to say, look, you're the right person, just not at this time for me, right? And I've allowed, I've sent a lot of referrals to candidates that weren't good fits for me that just crushed it in another industry. So again, I
Mm.
think that's that building that trust and that with the candidate. I mean, to me, it's a sale. I saw something on LinkedIn, Sean, and I don't want to go off track too much, but it was just perfect. It was from a recruiter that said, "Hats off to you," or "Here's a drink to you, Mr. Hiring Manager. If a candidate has impressed you in the first 5 minutes of an interview, and you said, 'I've seen enough. Let's move forward.'" Because to me, without checking all the boxes, the guy or the gal just did exactly what we needed them to do, sell themselves to us, right? On the interview. So the candidate in the interview process, back to our start, we don't check a box. Make sure you're checking the right box with the right person. And I think then
I
we
love
save
that.
a lot of trouble, right?
That's quotable, man. Don't check one box. Make sure you're checking the right boxes.
Right, right.
Okay, awesome. So if we're ready, then dive into this, because I want to give people something, whether they're a salesperson on the front line and they're figuring out, how do I do better in sales? How do I become part of the right team? Because maybe I'm in a temporary position, or maybe I know I'm not in the team that I really want to spend, the rest of my life with here, or I'm a leader and I say I need to build a great team. I know you're in a position right now where you're standing up teams. or maybe I'm a leader out there where I'm just ready to get more people in. I've got a great team under me. I want to make sure I keep it that way as I scale out. So I want to build a system around how I remove hope from the team building process, from the recruiting process, and standing up a new sales team or expanding my team. So when we in the military, George, when we built any system, it was just one more way to remove hope from how we sold, how we executed our mission. That's why we were just full of systems. You go to boot camp, you're learning systems. You go to your MOS school, your job school, you're learning systems. Because we've learned over the course of time, don't figure this out on the fly. Do not build the plane while it's trying to get off the runway or off of the carrier. Bad things happen. So
Right.
we have a basic process where we trim hope away. So we use this acronym TRIM here on the show, George. The T in TRIM stands for the trigger element of this system. So I'm in sales. I'm a leader or I'm a salesperson, and I'm thinking about going to a new team here. I'm thinking about standing up or expanding my team. Where do I trigger a recruiting system? Is it something I should be doing when I'm ready for expansion? Is it something I'm doing when I've gotten tasked from my CEO? Hey, you need to grow team because we need to grow RevOps. How do I know to pull this system off the shelf and begin looking at the right people to check the right boxes?
Yeah, you always do it. Look, I'm always recruiting because you know what? The worst day of my life, and it's happened, right, is when your best person who's never leaving you walks in and says, I just got a great opportunity and I'm going to have to leave. And, you know, Sean, you and I talked about this. I tell every person that I do finally, make a decision to come aboard. I ask for 2 years. Give me 2 years with me, and I'm either going to make you one of the greatest salesperson that you've ever been in this organization, and you're going to enjoy us, the organization, me as a leader, your teammates. You're going to make so much money, I'm never going to have to worry about you leaving. Or your dream job is going to come calling because you're going to have a reputation. They're going to hear about you, and you're going to interview well. And you know what? At that point, when you're ready to leave, I'm going to high five you, hug you, kiss you goodbye, and we're going to stay in touch. So those two things, when they do come aboard, you always have to be recruiting because you have to be ready for that right person to come aboard, or when your best person walks out the door. And again, it's happening.
Always be recruiting. No, that's absolutely right. We see salespeople. There's a lot of reasons a person will leave a team, but I think statistics point back to the fact it's usually because of leadership. It's because of team fit. You and I have both worked for teams when we could have made more money elsewhere, but we loved the team we were on, so we stuck it out. We stayed there even through the tough times.
Absolutely.
So if I'm always recruiting as the trigger elements, this is a system then that's constant for me as a sales leader. But now let's move into the R in TRIM, which is making it repeatable. So I need some steps, right? Just like a checklist that we would use if we were executing an operation. I need some steps that I can follow. And this might be, a 3 dozen item long thing, but let's just couch it in, the big chunks here. Give me 3 to 5 steps that I can follow in building or identifying or recruiting a great team. You mentioned the triangle. That could be, 3 out of the 5 or 6. But what should I be doing repeatedly once I identify the fact I should always be recruiting?
Yeah, I try to reach out to 5 to 10 people a week just to check in with them. One of the things I found is, when people are in need, when people, again, this layoff that we're having and this downsizing in the tech side, when people, they start to panic, right? And they reach out and they call and, hey, what have you heard? What do you need? This and that. And the other thing is you just want to build that network, but also show people that you want to stay in touch and you value their relationship when you're not in need. Right. So sometimes I reach out and say, look, I understand you're happy and I don't even have a position for you, but I'd like to stay in touch. Right. Because you never know when that right time is going to come along. I'll give you a quick story, Sean. I just had a guy, we've worked together one time 22 years ago, but we've stayed in touch over the last 20 years. I just never had the right position and he never had the need until recently. And all of a sudden now he's got his degree in cybersecurity, and I happen to be hiring for cybersecurity. What a fit. We've stayed in touch, and I called him. I said, hey, I know you're happy. He goes, no, I'm not. I'm actually looking. And then 20 years later, bam, we get the guy, and it's perfect. Ex-Marine too. How's that?
Oh, nice. So make sure you supply him with non-toxic crayons and use small words.
Yeah, exactly.
Need that.
So the repeatable part is make that a list. Make that, besides just I've got to run a report, I'm making cold calls. Put that. What I see is recruiting has to be a repeatable activity, like you just said. That's our number one job as sales leaders, is recruiting a great team.
I love it. So step 1 then in this recruiting process, always be reaching out, always be recruiting. Step 2, it sounds like, is once you've identified that person and there is that fit, they have a need, you have a need. Might be a match made in heaven, but don't check the box just on the fact they can hold a conversation or they present well in the initial
Correct.
interview. Ask those questions. Will you do the job? Can you do the job? And is there a team fit? And I felt like
Correct.
we dove pretty well into will you do the job and can you do the job? But I'm curious about this team fit thing
Mhm.
because I may lead a team. I know my culture, but how do I identify whether someone in a few interviews might be a good fit for my team? What am I asking? What am I looking for there?
One of the best. I love this question. I asked two questions on an interview that really throws people off. That I dive into this, right? And the first one is, look, Sean, I know what somebody's going to tell me that about you that likes you, right? I know what your wife's going to tell me. Well, maybe not, but tell me if I found somebody that's not a Sean fan, what are they going to tell me about you? Why don't they like you? Now
Mm,
that is quite a tell there because it's funny because usually 50% of the time the candidate always says, everybody likes me. Everybody likes me,
why
right?
wouldn't they?
Correct. But the other 50% of the time we start to get real and we figure out, well, I have expectations. I have expectations to succeed. I want to win. I want to do this. That's what you start looking for. You want that like mentality there, right? Not so much the likable piece. That's important, right? People don't do business they don't know, like, or trust. But the likable piece, you just talked about the life of the party. They're jumping up on the table, lampshade on their head, right?
Yeah.
I've seen a million of those people. Ask them, though, can you look across the table at your best friend and say, give me $1 million right now? I need it for a sale. And most of them won't do it for the fear of that rejection, right?
Mm,
So that's why you have to dig in that. But ask the questions, know, like, and trust, and dig in on. So that's the first one. Tell
yep.
me what they don't like. The second question is always, take me back to a time in high school, and I always go to high school or before, where you were most proud of an accomplishment that either you did or you were part of. And I always want to see what they go back to, because if they always go back to, I was the third string, I was practice squad on state runner up. I love that, right? Because I knew that they were willing to dig in and those questions, but you can see them pump their chest out, and the way they become passionate about something that happened years ago. Because let's face it, back in high school, we're still not soured on the world, right?
Yeah.
We're not paying bills, we're not adulting, so we always do go back to something really good. And I can see them, like I said, if the pride just bubbles up on them and they tell me something that where it was a team, man, that I could tell right then it's going to be a team thing.
So these sound like awesome ways to then systemize the recruiting process. Great questions to get those multiple boxes checked to figure out all the way from will you do it, can you do it, to team fit. Let's move
Mm-hmm.
into the I in trim, which in the
Okay.
military we had to learn to do with every system. The I stands for improvement. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we still fighting in the way we did in 1776, well, we'd have been overcome a few different times in a few different wars. But we learned to update our processes, our tactics, and our strategies. I'd like to know how you would recommend a sales leader update this system. How often should I be looking at my results and figuring out should I change my questions? Is the economy changing to the point where I need to be reaching out to 10 people just to maintain the relationships instead of 5? What are some things that I can be doing as a leader to improve this system?
Yeah, well, I think sales is the one of the easiest metrics that we can have, right? You either sell or you don't sell. I mean, that's really where it comes down to. So if a team is selling, and if a team is working, and if a team is developing leads, moving the rock, then your system's good, right? And again, we talked about always be improving. So you just if you see the production start to slip, then maybe you look at making some changes, right? Is our will do can do different, right? Did something change? As an example, in tech, we have typically AEs, account executives, and AMs, account managers. We have hunters and farmers, right? So when we were starting off, did we have incredible growth because we were hunting? And I developed a team of hunters, right? And now all of a sudden the game is gone and we got to start growing, and none of us like to farm and the
Mhm.
production's down. So maybe we have to go look at somebody different. All right. And maybe we have to change our system a little bit or build out a different team. And so I think that's really where it comes down to is I always put feedback loops and action plans. That's the most important thing, is a feedback loop and an action plan, because nothing worse than developing a plan and then just keep riding it all the way to the bottom of the ocean, right? So
Yeah, we're just burn the house down in the process, but we're executing that plan, so life is good. All right,
correct.
so we've got making the trigger repeatable, improvable. Now, the M in trim is the final bit. You touched on it a bit, which is measurable. And so you
Mhm.
said, if the team is selling and moving pipeline, the system's good. But I'd like to know, as a sales leader, because maybe I'm in an industry that has a long sales cycle. I know yours can be pretty lengthy. Maybe I'm waiting 12 or 18 months and I'm selling the entire time to get that one 6 or 7 figure deal. How do I know in leading indicators that I've got the right people on the team, that my recruiting efforts are yielding results in a positive direction? What are some leading indicators in sales I can measure?
We use I use a litmus test, right? There's 13 pieces of a litmus test on every deal, and then I also teach. Man, I keep everything simple. I believe in a 5-step sales cycle. Anybody that's ever worked for me, and anybody that's watching this podcast that's worked for me, is probably rolling their eyes, spitting out the 5 right now, because it's just what I believed in, right? Which is build rapport, needs analysis, present, handle objections, and close. That's been taught to me for the last 20 years. And it works, right? So the measurable piece is when we actually look at this litmus test, and we never move forward, right? So if I don't have solid rapport, I'm never going to go into a needs analysis, because if you don't know, like, and trust me, why would you tell me anything honest? And if you're not going to be honest with me, how can I actually fix a problem? So we always start with rapport, right? And I know I'm speeding up because I get passionate about this piece. So I do, right? See, the measurable piece. So I will actually dig in on these litmus tests, and we will go over your 30, 60, 90, right? I like to start at the 30, but then jump into the 90, because I want to pull that stuff forward, right? So we'll start to say, tell me about the report. Tell me about, have you had coffee? Have you had lunch? Have you done a walkthrough? Tell me what you've done. Tell me about your customer. Do you know them, right? Where'd they go to school? Who's their favorite sports team? Were they military? What have you done to dig in? And, there seems to be this thing in my industry, it's not a quantity, right? It's quality, right? So,
Yeah.
I've had to pare people down to 100 top accounts where they were calling on 4,000 before, because you just can't get to know 4,000 people. Give me your
No.
top 100, right? And let's work those through the system. I also have a spreadsheet, and I'll send it to anybody that I've worked through what exactly needs done in these cycles, right? Well, I need to make a first email, a second email. I need to have an introduction call. I need to connect on LinkedIn. I need to do a strategic stop by. I know everything that I need to do to get to the point where I'm having a demo. And so I've made this thing where I can look at a prospect and just checkbox it, right? So I can actually, on a one-on-one with a rep, and when you're managing 15, 18 people, which I've done before, and it's tough, you have to really move in and hone in on what you got to focus. So looking at a spreadsheet to go, okay, this is a top 120. You sent email 1 and 2, you've LinkedIn connection, but you still haven't made a phone call or haven't got the answer. There's what we need to do. So what do we need to do? So then we start focusing in on that measurable piece, So I'm, again, big piece on, I think 12 face-to-face meetings, unique meetings a week, nothing bad's ever going to happen. So I don't care if you make 100 calls a week. I don't care if you send 10,000 emails. Get me 10 to 12 face-to-face unique with a prospect, and nothing bad's ever going to happen, because we're going to figure something out. And sometimes
You'll
no
figure out
answer
a
is
way
the
to
answer.
serve them. Yeah, I know
Correct.
that's amazing.
Absolutely.
So we've got this entire sales system built. I want to make sure that salespeople, sales leaders have a chance to begin implementing it, because it's going to look a little different in every industry. So, George, for folks that are interested in that spreadsheet, if they want to connect with you, I know you're active on LinkedIn, but how do we find out more about you, man? How do we get deeper into your world?
Yeah, send me an email. Go to sekion.com. Look us up. I mean, the world of cyber is hot right now. I'm recruiting salespeople. I'm training salespeople. So if you're if you're top 5% in whatever industry you're in, come on over to cyber, where all the money's at, man. So and give me a call. But no, George.Fisher, Fisher at sekion.net, or reach out on LinkedIn.
That's amazing, sir. So we'll make sure people have that in the show notes, and we'll tag you so they can go find you easily on LinkedIn. But for all of us here at Bulletproof Selling, if you're catching this on the video format, then make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. We've got all of these archived conversations with brilliant sales leaders just like George to help you systemize any aspect of your sales cycle. Of course, if you're listening to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, best thing you can do, leave us a review. Let other salespeople know, hey, this show will help you actually improve sales. not by hoping that you improve, but by giving you tactics and strategies to make that happen. And of course, for you, George, thanks so much for giving up your time today, where you could be managing team, building team, to give back to the sales community. That service element that the military taught you, it's still alive and well. So thanks so much for that. And man, let's get out there, man. Let's make selling bulletproof.
Let's do it, brother. Thanks, Sean.